Well, good evening. I'm going to go ahead and start in on a question that was sent to me earlier. We've had several of those. And if in the meantime you have questions that you'd like to ask or comments to make, please put those up. We had a grandmother write and say this. She said, let's see, relationship with her 11-year-old granddaughter, Jordan. Everybody was preparing for an excursion to a park for a picnic, and my daughter-in-law, Christina, had told Jordan what she needed to do before we left. Numerous times during the preparations, Christina had observed Jordan playing and had asked if she had finished her responsibilities. Parents do this so badly. Are you done with your job? No. Well, go do your job. And then they don't do anything about it, which of course teaches the child what? The child essentially trains the parent that the parent has to ask the child to do the job 20 times. Do you see the effect? The child is training the parent. The parent isn't teaching the kid anything. The kid is teaching the parent, okay, ask me 20 times and then I'll do it. Or yell at me and then I'll do it. And so the parent obediently asks the child 20 times to do something and then finally yells at the kid, and the kid does it, and the kid's going, okay, I don't have to do anything until I'm asked to do it 20 times and yelled at. And most of the time the parent gets tired before asking 20 times and yelling and ends up doing it himself or herself. So the kid is pretty smart, actually. The kid has learned that most of the time the parent gives in or gives up and the kid doesn't end up having to do a thing. Pretty smart kids. So each time the kid answered with some variation of the word no. Once the kid rolled her eyes, gave an exaggerated sigh, and stomped off to her room. We've all seen that. Several other times she made a smart alecky or disrespectful remark. I admit I was wondering if Christina, my daughter-in-law, was going to get tired of this behavior. All she ever said in reproof a couple of times was, watch the attitude. Now, do you see how worthless this is? So, go do your job, nothing happens. Go do your job, nothing happens. Go do your job, still nothing happens. The child isn't inconvenienced at all. The child is playing all this time. What does the kid care? It just means that every once in a while the kid's playing, the kid has to hear, go do your job, and then the child just ignores the parent and goes on playing. The kid's training the parent beautifully. And then the kid says some little smart alecky thing, and the parent goes, watch your attitude. Well, so? This is almost music to the kid's ears. It essentially translates to, you don't have to do anything. The grandmother says, I could tell she didn't want to spoil the enjoyment of the anticipated trip for the rest of us by initiating a scene with Jordan. Kids count on this. They count on parents not wanting the inconvenience, the conflict, the everything, and so they just continue to do nothing and continue to do nothing, knowing that most of the time we're just going to go, oh, it's just not worth it. And so we give up, and the kid ends up not doing anything. Finally, Jordan, the grandchild, bounced back into view and came to stand by me as I assembled water bottles for everybody. We exchanged a few pleasantries, and then she spouted some disrespectful or smart alecky remark that I don't remember, because I literally saw red. I was angry about her repeated flouting of polite behavior and absolutely livid that she would dare to be rude to me, Her Royal Highness. I fixed her with a glare and said between clenched teeth, you don't speak to me that way. Which is a real drag for a kid, because the kid has been taught to be irresponsible. The kid has been essentially taught by her parents, go ahead and say whatever you want. Do whatever you wish. And then every once in a while, do you see how utterly irresponsible this is on the part of the parents? The parents teach the child, do whatever you want, do whatever you want, do whatever you want, do whatever you want, and then every once in a while, the parents blow up. It's actually kind of crazy on the part of the parent. When is the kid supposed to take the parent seriously? So the kid never really knows when the parent means it and when the parent doesn't. So then the grandmother says, you don't speak to me that way. And now the kid not only hears, my parents and grandparents are nuts, I never know when they're going to blow up. But now the child hears, when I'm disrespectful or rude or whatever, nobody loves me. So the kid's really screwed by this. You could have heard a pin drop. Everything was in suspended animation for what seemed like hours, and then Jordan said, well, okay, in a long-suffering voice, and left the room. Of course, I'm sure still not doing her job. And you're right, although I thought blowing up would make me feel better, it didn't. I mean, being unloving never makes us feel better. And even then, I knew that Christina was at least uncomfortable. That's her daughter-in-law. I realized she probably viewed my blow-up as a rejection of her parenting skills and maybe as a personal attack on her as a competent human being, which it probably was. So, what I'd like to know is how I could have used real love in this situation. I'm thinking maybe I could have excused myself and called somebody to vent, although I didn't have anybody to call at that time, and then come back in the room and acted as if nothing had happened. Or, the other question was how to react to a steady diet of attitude toward me from Jordan. Over the past months, as I've been learning about real love, I've seen that this anger is a long-term problem for me, so I'd really like to get a handle on it. Remember that this child is acting like this because she doesn't feel loved. So we don't want to stop her from expressing her attitude, because what she's saying is, would somebody please love me? So stopping her is essentially saying, I don't want to hear you telling me that you need to be loved. So go away. We don't want to have anything to do with loving you. What you want to do is respond to the plea to be loved. So the kid comes over to you and says some snotty little thing. And so you reach out and put your arm around this little snotty little child and say, so is what you're trying to tell me that you need a little hug? And you put your arm around the child and you give the child a brief hug. What you're doing in that moment, it doesn't really matter what you say or do. What you're doing in that moment is indicating to the child that you're unaffected by the snotty attitude. You're not responding to protect yourself, and you're not trying to control the child. And so you put your arm around the child and say, so now here are the water bottles, would you take these to the car? So you love the child and at the same time teach the child. So it's always love and teach. Put your arm around her. Oh, even when you talk to me like that, I sure love you. And you hand the child a bottle and say, now would you take these to the car? So always teaching, always loving, and never defending and controlling. That's what they need to see, and it's what they never do see. As soon as they act out, as soon as they're unloving, the people around them immediately respond by being unloving. So all they ever see is unloving examples. It's the loving them that they need. And you don't have to go to great lengths. You just realize this kid needs something. Touch them, look at them. And when the kid says, I'm exaggerating, I hate you. Oh, well, I don't hate you. Isn't that nice? It doesn't really matter what you say. It's your attitude. It's caring about them. Let's see, what was your other question? So the steady diet of attitude toward you from Jordan bothers you because you actually expect the people around you to fill you up, including your granddaughter. You actually believe that after all you've done for the people around you, they owe you something. She owes you respect, for example. Get over it. As a grandmother, it's your job to love your daughter, daughter-in-law, everybody else. Period. It's your job to love. Everywhere you go, it's your job to love other people. If you are pretty sure you can't love them ahead of time, don't be around them. Really. There's no sense even being around people when you know you can't be loving, because it's only going to go badly. So you go into a situation with people knowing that you're going to be loving one way. And if you expect anything back, it'll go badly. It'll go badly every time. Victim says, What a clever name, by the way. First name, last name. A 2-year relationship just ended. It probably should have been a 2-week-long relationship. That's a brilliant observation. 2-year-long relationships that end badly should almost always have been 2-week-long relationships. But we weren't honest enough in the beginning to recognize the signs of people being unloving and of our not being loving enough to stop the relationship as soon as we realized it wasn't going to work. We kept hoping it would change. But what with both of our clinging and other patterns, it dragged on as a long, painful attachment. Sure. Ending it took, a year and a half. I mean, how common is this? So you're not unusual. We find a little bit of imitation love from somebody, we feel good for a little bit, and then we spend the next year and a half or whatever trying to milk that last little bit of blood out of the turnip and can never get it. And then we're frustrated and irritated when it doesn't happen. Let's see. I've been doing real love coaching for the last 4 months, which has helped me get unstuck, though my coach was not advising me to either keep or lose the relationship, which is almost always what a coach will do. I hardly ever tell somebody to get in or out of a relationship. What I tell them is, get more loving, love people better, get more love from other people, and the relationship will just do what it's going to do. Every once in a while, in a really clearly abusive, horrible, oppressive relationship, I'll tell somebody, at least get out temporarily. But on the whole, as you become more loving, it'll become pretty obvious whether the relationship's going to make it or not. Yesterday, 2 days after the end, someone in an unrelated relationship was attacking me, blaming me, criticizing me, victiming like crazy, and acting like a crazed prosecuting attorney. And suddenly, it was like looking into a horrible mirror and seeing how I had been during the entire 2-year relationship. What a delightful piece of honesty this is. I mean, for everybody who's watching, this is what honesty is like. What this person just did is seeing how we have been the person who has been the difficult one in a relationship. Sure, our partners may have made countless mistakes, but irrelevant. The point is to see what we do wrong. And here's this person saying, you know, I've been the crazed, prosecuting, victim-y person throughout our relationship and attacking my partner. No doubt, as a result of all the coaching, I completely melted down right in the midst of that encounter and really got the awful big picture of how I'd spent 2 years punishing my partner and basically wrecked that relationship, which at one point had been moving toward marriage. Aren't you glad it didn't? You just weren't ready for that. And now I feel stunned and awful. The insight feels overwhelming, though. So, overwhelmingly thorough. So that's all for the good. I don't believe that I can quite go that route ever again, though my fearfulness in relationships will still be strong. That's okay. It's okay to have some fear in the relationship that you'll repeat your past patterns, because it will make you at least wary of jumping into a relationship again. But here's the problem. I can already feel myself starting to whine my way back into self-pity and more clinging, wanting their relationship back, wanting to make it up to him, wanting another chance, wallowing in the feelings of loss and pain. Sure, understandable. I've been calling and talking to real love friends, and that's helped, but the habit of wallowing is so strong, it's like the pain and despair is some kind of weird refuge or something. Anyway, can you offer some words of wisdom for the present so I don't do something stupid, and some reflection for the future of a recovering world-class victim and clinger? Sure. What we get out of being a victim is very much like what you get as a cocaine addict. As a victim, you get this temporary sense of approval. You get this enormous sense of power over people. You get all of this sympathy. I mean, when people go, when people do that, they get the attention of an entire room. And we hold everybody around us hostage. Victims are actually cruel taskmasters. They're slave owners. I was talking to a couple just the other day, and this man is actually a strong, educated, fairly strong-willed, bright man, and yet his wife holds him hostage in every single decision of their marriage. Why? Because every time he does anything that she doesn't like, what she does is, you're going to hurt me, or you're crossing my boundaries, or you're picking on me, or you're bullying me, or how can you do that to me? As soon as somebody goes, the whole room stops and goes, oh no, what have we done to you? Because, and part of that is actually a testament to our desire to be good people. We don't want to hurt people. But victims use it in a really snaky, insidious way. They make us feel guilty for things that are not our responsibility. Victims make a choice whether to be victimized or not. I was talking to a lady recently on the phone, and she and her husband had made an agreement between them to do some things. And between them, they had made it was a written agreement. They said, okay, we're going to do this and this and this and this. And she called just having an absolute fit because he hadn't done one of 20 things. Well, she hadn't done 19 of them. And she was picking on him because he hadn't done one that she got a bee in her bonnet about that she wanted him to do. So I said, well, we can't just talk about one. Let's go over the whole agreement. So I said, so let's go over the agreement. And I said to her, so Susie, make up a name. I said, Susie, let's go over the agreement. Number one. And I read the agreement. I said, so have you kept that? Have you kept that part of the agreement? And she said, well, I am not going to be bullied here. I am not going to let you bully me and violate my boundaries. I'm going, I just asked you a question. She said, well, I'm not going to let you bully me. So how would you recommend that I find out whether you've kept your agreement without asking you a question? And she said, well, ask him. And I said, well, so if I ask you, I'm bullying you, but if I ask him, it's not bullying? It's okay if I ask him, but it's not okay if I ask you. And that is the world of the victim. Right there, in that one little statement, that's how the victim defines his or her world. If you do the same thing to anybody else, that's okay. The victim doesn't care if the whole rest of the world is skewered, drawn and quartered, dragged behind horses, flayed, burned alive. But the instant you do anything to inconvenience a victim, oh, look what you've done. And then the whole world is supposed to come to a stop. Now, in defense of victims, they don't do this intentionally. Victims don't sit around and go, I wonder how I can get everybody to quit picking on me. I'll act like a victim. They don't. So when I describe this behavior, I'm not making fun of them. I'm not saying they're doing something vicious or mean. What I'm pointing out is that this is a behavior that's been going on for so long that almost universally we all fall for it. And we've got to stop doing that. We have to stop falling for victims, and we have to stop acting like victims because they expect everything to quit. And that's what you're doing, getting back to you. It's so tempting to act like the victim because when you walk into a room and go, I'm in such pain, everybody stops and goes, oh, you are? Oh, no. In fact, you can even get sympathy from yourself when you're all by yourself, when you're alone. You can go, woe is me, and sort of self-righteously go, oh yes, you poor thing. We can do it all alone. The problem with that is that is so addictive, that feeling, that sense of, that high we get from sympathy and controlling other people, that it's just like cocaine. And the only way we'll ever get over that and replace it with real love, which is what we really want, is to, for a significant period of time, quit using it. The devastation of victimhood is that while we're using it, we can never feel loved. As long as you say to me, Fred hurt me, when you tell me that, or if you even tell me I hurt you, any sympathy I give you will never feel like love to you because you just had to manipulate me for it. So what I'm suggesting to you is that you look at it exactly like you'd look at an addiction to drugs, exactly like you'd look at alcoholism, that you tell the truth about this rigorously to some real love friends and say, help me, I'm starting to act like a victim again, help me see what I'm doing and help me quit it. Because as long as you do it, you're going to have to go through a withdrawal over and over and over again. Go through it once. Go through it completely, because it's the hardest part of withdrawal is the beginning part. Don't keep doing it over and over again. So, way to go that you're seeing this at all. This is big stuff for a victim to see this. It's so much funner to live as a non-victim. The victim here says, that example of the wife guilting the husband rings painfully true. The fragile flower just can't tolerate anybody's behavior. Exactly. I mean, victims are just, they're tender everywhere. You ask them a question and they go, oh, you've attacked me. You make an observation, you're attacking them. You say something, you make any kind of suggestion, you're bullying them or controlling them. And yet, ironically, in fact, incredibly ironically, they do to everyone else exactly what they accuse everybody of doing to them. But see, that's okay. It's okay for victims to hurt and attack and control and criticize and abuse everybody else because it doesn't hurt them. They don't feel any pain. But as soon as they feel any themselves, woe be to the world. And it's understandable. Who likes to hurt? John asked, John always has these great questions. Let me pick one. Let's see. John was talking about his anger. He was saying it's Mother's Day, which was, what, yesterday, the day before? And he said, for my ex-wife, I put together a slideshow movie of all my digital photos of our 3-year-old son. It's usually pretty dangerous to put something together for one's ex-wife in the first place. That was very brave. While I was preparing the slideshow, I came across a picture that it broke my heart when I first saw it. My son was standing on the back of a fixed caboose used at the Chamber of Commerce in Bryson City, North Carolina. We've all seen those, you know, the standing railroad car kind of usually sitting like next to the Chamber of Commerce. Oh, yeah, that's what he said here. Usually next to some city building there in the center of town. It's a beautiful picture, but I'm the only one to know that while I was taking the picture, he was saying all aboard, in that, you know, sweet little innocent 3-year-old voice. And I took his all aboard and turned it into pain and his loss because I was the only one that could come aboard. There was no all, because Mommy had decided she wanted a divorce. She decided that to stay and work on the relationship, especially for him, did not matter to her. Just as the first time I saw the picture, it hit me last night and today. That selfish little witch, how could she do this to our son? There's no nuclear family now for him to reference to the rest of his life. He'll be scarred for life because of that witch, you know, who always has to follow her friends, meaning his ex-wife. You know, she can't be an individual. She let her friends influence her like they always have and make up her mind. You know, what do they know? They all came from divorced families or divorced themselves. They ruined my family. So he's kind of acting like a victim here and kind of ranting to himself. I only wish that they were men instead of women. Kind of reminds you of My Fair Lady, huh? Why can't women just be more like us? Now, my son gets to see firsthand that it is better to run from a relationship rather than working, learning, and loving. And by the way, all this is very natural at some point or other when we're in pain to blame everything on somebody else. So it's natural to feel victimized at some point. It's what do we do with it? Whether we wallow in it, whether we keep feeling victimized, or whether we realize what we're doing. And then John says, I could go on, but I think you get the point here. I choose to get very angry when it comes to my son and what I think he is losing from the divorce. And we talked about this in the victim book. We don't feel quite as justified when somebody's attacking us. But, ooh, we can get so self-righteous and so, white knight on the horse when we're defending somebody else. Like the man who regularly abuses his wife and is unkind and unloving to her. But if somebody else says something unloving about his wife, then he stands up and goes, "What'd you say about my wife?" I mean, we just love to defend somebody else who's being victimized. It makes us look all grand and, caring. And that's not to say we don't care about that person, but it gives us kind of a self-righteous feel. That's where it's known as the yo mama self-righteousness. That's where that comes from. We may not feel justified in defending ourselves, but when somebody insults our mother, then we feel, especially justified in getting angry at that person. Let's see. After my anger comes out, then I'll pause and tell myself that the best thing that could have happened to you has happened because of the divorce. You found a path to real love. You discovered a world that most people have no idea is right in front of them. You've begun to tell the truth about yourself. You have new principles to guide your life in a loving way. You're learning to be loving. You're a completely different person. And best of all, you can pass on unconditional love to your son. This is something that would never have happened unless the divorce put you on this real love path. So I ask myself questions like, ask yourself, John, is your son better off with just one parent in his life giving him unconditional love, or would it be better the way it would have been with both parents conditionally loving him? Which is exactly why in the parenting book I say divorce does not harm children. It's not the divorce that hurts kids. It's the lack of unconditional love that led to the divorce that causes both the divorce and the harm to the kids. It's not the divorce that does it. It's the lack of unconditional love. So way better that a child has one unconditionally loving parent than that a child has two parents who don't love him unconditionally. So it's not the divorce thing. Then I will say, but I could live with the pig and like it. I could do this because it would give him better life, having his mommy and daddy always there in the same house for him. And then you can always do the, if only I'd tried harder and loved his mother. And, essentially it comes down to if only I had known then what I know now, which is like impossible. You can't know 5 years ago what you know now. It can't be done. So sure, if you'd known 5 years ago what you know now, you probably would have avoided this divorce. But how could that have happened? Sometimes we pay a pretty high price for our learning. I lost a marriage as a result of my stupidness. And I paid the price of losing it for learning what I know now. Learning can be pretty painful. It requires a revolution of who we are. Are we willing to pay the price? Now, that doesn't mean we say, okay, I'm going to lose my marriage to learn this, but very often the price of revolutionizing who we are requires that the people who we gained in our lives through trading imitation love often fall away. We don't end up leaving them. It more often works like this, because we work toward becoming more conditionally loving. The people who don't just disappear. And how could it be otherwise? I do not know why I think this would be better, but I do know that he should see me as loving the pig regardless, but I would rather have mommy living in the same house. I would also like him to have a brother or sister with the same mommy, not a new mommy. Sure, we all love to have everything. It'd be infinitely better if he could have two loving parents, but it didn't work out that way, did it? I mean, it's kind of like saying, I wish I had wings and I could fly. Yes, there is expectation, choice, and controlling all involved in this issue, but I still can't quite leave it alone. Understandably so. How can we help but kind of wishing that, if only things had been better or different, but they couldn't have been. I look back at the mistakes that I made with my kids, for example, and go, I wish I hadn't hurt them. Well, knowing what I knew then, how would that have been possible? How could I have known then what I have learned over the last 15, 20 years? Absurd. It's an absurdity. And then he does, a real father wouldn't have let this happen. He would have discovered and fixed the problem. Again, crazy talk. Just insane. It's taken you all of this experience, all of this conflict, all the pain to learn what you know now. Regrettable that it took all that, but it did. And there we are. And so now all that matters is where are we going to go from here? Haley says, one of my friends just emailed me, my godson has gone missing. Not showing up for a court appearance, and now there's a bench warrant issued. That's always painful, knowing there's a warrant out for somebody you love. His phone goes to voicemail. He has disappeared. For background, all I know is that he's had an extra tough time finding himself in L.A. as he reached his teens and came out to friends and his mom. He's been running with the wrong crowd for 3 or 4 years. I don't have details of exactly what kind of trouble he's been in. She just now emailed me with this news and says that she walked off her job yesterday and is doing battle with siblings in Denver over the sale of parents' property. I guess her dad died. She's in a meltdown. Something like this happens about every 12 months. Now, is this any surprise to anybody? So here's a lady who is in battle with her siblings, with her family, is in a meltdown. Some emotional crisis like this happens every 12 to 18 months. Is there any wonder that this woman's son is in some kind of trouble? Not really, huh? It really is about kids not feeling loved. I got a call from a lady today from New York City. I've never met her, and she's describing 4 children that live in her house with her, and they're all over 21, and these 4 kids absolutely run over her like a herd, treat her terribly, use her money in her home and abuse her and scream at her and curse at her, and she thinks that she's loving them by letting them treat her like that. People really don't know what love looks like. And until we do, we're going to turn out children who are just a mess. I mean, her son, just the other day, his friends were at a card game, and he happened to not show up that night for their usual, whatever it was, Friday night card game. And on the night that he didn't show up, somebody came in and, shot one of his friends dead in the card game. Could easily have been him. And she's thinking, oh my goodness, how lucky was he? Well, I guess you could call it luck, but unless she learns to love her son and do things differently, could very well be her son the next time. And then when her son is shot dead, she's going to wonder, well, what could we do differently the next time? Until we learn to love our children differently, until we learn to bring real love into our own lives, this kind of stuff is guaranteed to happen. So here's this lady who's in a battle with her siblings. She's in a constant emotional turmoil. This stuff was predictable, was essentially guaranteed to happen with her son. So what can you do about it? Not much from here. I mean, if he calls you and asks you to help him, I suppose you could love him. But all we can do is trust that eventually people will find the love that they need. It may not be now. It may be after 10 years in prison. Who knows? I got a letter today from a man who is, he's either 80 or 81, who's been in prison for the last 20 years. And over the last, 10, 15 years has been studying real love. And real love has completely changed his outlook on life. It's never too late. This man has paid the price of his entire life and the freedom of his last 20 years to learn these principles. That's a pretty high price to pay. I guess maybe it should be our goal to learn the principles and to find the happiness in our life without paying such a big price, huh? The Pleasanton group says, had a wonderful Mother's Day with my mom this year. Best ever. Since applying these real love principles, it was amazing to feel so loving toward her, considering our history, how much I resented her and wanted to withhold love from her in the past. And she's just feeling grateful. Pretty fun, huh? I mean, there have been times in my life where my relationship with my parents wasn't so great. And you know, it was because I just didn't get it. I didn't know how to love them. I didn't know how to let go of past slights or offenses, real and imagined. And now, all foolishness. I mean, I've had conversations with my parents, you know, now where, you know, we all understand that we're all just stupid. We don't know what we're doing. We do the best we can. Whoever taught us, we do the best with what we know. And sure, my parents made mistakes. Yeah, so did I. And now they're doing the best they can to love me, and I'm doing the best I can to love my kids, and what else is there? But to resent them for the mistakes they made, to resent somebody for doing their best, that just doesn't make sense at all, in any way. So, sure, we can say that our parents screwed us up and caused the pain in our lives. That actually is true. But so, now what? What are you going to do? They did the best they could. They loved us the best they knew how. And any happiness that we're going to find in our lives is now entirely up to us. It's our choice. Blaming anybody for how we feel is only going to make us more miserable. In fact, I just went out to visit my mom for Mother's Day and for her birthday. Just over the last several days, had just a wonderful time visiting her. Here's a victim who says, I see what you mean about the addictive quality of victimhood. So the antidote is just to tell the truth. So, for example, if someone says that something really stings or hurts or poor me, instead of freaking out, I should do or say what? The antidote to victimhood is actually love. But the way to get the antidote is to tell the truth. See the difference? I mean, not a huge difference, but it just kind of gives you a kind of a understanding of the process. So let's say that you are feeling like a victim. You could wallow in that forever, and the people around you will let you. In fact, some people actually kind of enjoy it when you act like a victim, because then they get to act like victims too. We kind of enjoy getting together for little victim parties. We do. Oh, this happened to me. Yes, to me too. My husband treats me terrible. So does mine. We all kind of reinforce each other's horribilizing. And the more that I sympathize with you, the more I kind of ratify or confirm or justify the way you believe. And that's just not true. But you'll tend to believe it. The more people you can get to agree with you, the more true you tend to believe that it is. So as a victim, what do you need to do? You need to be around people who are not only loving, but have the courage to tell you when you're acting like a victim. And that's not a lot of people. You need to be around people who have the guts to say, you know, that's not the fault of your husband. They don't need to say, oh, you're acting like a victim. I hardly ever use those words with people, almost never. But if somebody comes to me and they say, oh, I'm so miserable because my wife is a witch, then I say, well, you know, she probably is a witch. I don't deny that. I don't argue with them or refute what they're saying, because the idea is to genuinely listen to them. That's part of loving. Your wife probably is a witch. I believe you. Probably rides a broom, wears that black hat, probably has a cat. But what do you do? So when she acts like a witch, how do you behave toward her? Well, and most of the time they won't even have an answer. Well, I don't do anything. Ask them some real pointed questions. Ask them the questions until they get to the point where they see they're not loving either. And then the idea isn't then to tell them, well, you need to be more loving. No, 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 no. It's to get them to the point where they can tell the truth about their choices and then feel loved for while they're making their mistakes. So if you came to me and whined about how you were a victim, I would help you see what your choices were, how you were being unloving or ugly or attacking or whatever it is you were doing, and then would just accept you. I wouldn't have to tell you what to do different. The more I accept you while you're flawed and making mistakes, the less you'll have a need to do those things. If you feel loved, if you have $20 million, you don't have a need to fight, kick, squall, scratch, whine about every little $2, do you? The $20 million and $2 story. It just isn't a big deal anymore. And we don't have as much need to whine. So, and you wouldn't. The people who have in the past been huge victims and have felt increasingly loved have seen a huge change in their lives. Karen says, I got furiously angry at work last Friday because somebody was rude. How dare they? Amazing how quickly I can go from neutral to nuclear. And then she's got a smiley face here. Then I went and complained to two different people. And she says, attacking and victim in one swift move. Some days are better than others. Now see, victim was just saying, so what do you do? And you do this. You do what Karen just did. She said, so somebody was rude to her. Now, this is important to see. So, Karen, somebody was rude to you. Now, did they victimize you? Yes. People really do things to us. We are victimized all the time. If we're standing in line and I push you out of the way, I just victimized you. If I say something snotty to you, I victimize you. If I take $2 from you, I victimize you. If I make you wait, I can victimize you in 100 ways in a day. So we all get victimized all the time. That just happens. We can't stop that. What we do have control over is whether we feel like victims and act like victims. That's what we have control over. So if I have $20 million, you can always take $2 from me. You can victimize me. But if I have $20 million, I don't feel victimized. It's like, so? And that's why we need to get enough for love in our lives. So that if somebody, like you just said here, somebody is rude, then you just go, so what is it you're trying to tell me? So if somebody comes in, and I've done this many times, so many times that now I find it almost funny to watch. Somebody comes in and they're rude to you, and they say, do this for me. And you say, well, I'd be glad to. Tell me more of what you need. And they say, well, nobody ever pays attention to it. And you go, I'll bet they don't. It's a terrible feeling, isn't it? So tell me what it is exactly that you need. Well, I'd be glad to do that. What else do you need? And the more you listen to them and pay attention to them, that's the thing. That's where you're loving them, not especially what you do, whether you fill their order or listen. It's the paying attention to them. The anger just goes away. They just turn into pussycats. It makes a huge difference to love them. Whereas if you respond to them to defend yourself, like Karen was saying here, this is a hoot. Karen said, I went then, she felt like a victim, and she went and complained to 2 other people. Why? So that she could get their sympathy, and so that these 2 other people would then give her 2 more votes, so that she could go, so that she could go back to her desk and go, see, I was right. And she could go, 2 votes for me, no votes for the rude person. We do this without thinking about it all the time. Then we go talk to somebody else, and boy, at the end of the day, we go, 6 votes for me, none for you, so I'm righter. Crazy, huh? The cool thing is that rather than persist in this for a week, Karen goes, isn't this stupid of me? And here I am. Notice, I'm actually making fun of Karen. I'm not saying, oh, what a brave little soul you were, Karen. I'm not telling her to do something different. I'm not controlling her. I'm just going, cool. I mean, what she did was victim-y and whiny. And I'm going, neat. And as I do that, and as I look at Karen and say, that is so cool you would tell the truth about that, Karen feels cared for. And the more loved she feels, gradually, over time, not all at once, she's going to feel less like acting like a victim, bit by bit. It's really pretty powerful. And it's not some just overnight deal. It's not like, oh, okay, I feel loved, I'll never act like a victim again. Yeah, we will. We all do it. John says, I've been reading The Real Love for Wise Men and Women. And he said, it's a great book to read after about 6 months of real love study. Couldn't agree more. If you read it too soon, it doesn't even make sense. It's kind of like if you go to get your MBA, and at least most MBA programs that I know of, when you get out of college, you have to go, I think it's 1 or 2 years of work, actual practical experience, before you can even go to MBA school. And same with the Wise Men, Wise Women book. If you read it too soon, you don't even get it, because it's really meant to be an advanced study course. He said, I enjoy the garbage story, and I recommend those of you who haven't read it do that. Get the Wise Men and Wise Women book and read the story about the garbage guy. It's amazing to see how we can all carry our stinky garbage around with us all of our lives. And I mean, it burdens us to death. I like the way you spin the just think positive and all will be good. Yeah. There's all the garbage. In some cases, even when we think we put it down, we can still have more and not know it. That's a fact. It's not, and I'm not sure if this is exactly what John's talking about, but it's really common for people to think that if we just think positive, then things will be positive. That kind of false optimism can actually be very destructive. What's that great quote from Candide, Jonathan?
Optimism is a mania for saying things are well when one is in hell.
That's it. Optimism is a mania for saying that things are well when one is in hell. That kind of optimism is crazy. Optimism can be just as much of a lie as being negative. Positive lies are still lies. What we grow from most is telling the truth and feeling loved while we just tell the truth. Not just the truth about the negative, not just the truth, just the truth. And boy, it's really very healing. We did a lot of that at the Dallas immersion that we just did, and that was just fun to watch. People feel more loved as they told the truth about themselves. Many people, for the first time in their lives, ever. I was talking to a couple just the other night, and to watch her say, I've always thought I was unconditionally loving, and I'm not. Well, good for you. Or to watch him say, I always thought I was reaching out and connecting with my partner, and I realized I've never really intimately connected with anybody. It's always been way more superficial than I thought. Well, good for you. It's not that the condition is commendable. It's that the truth is. Because once I identify where I am, wherever it is, I can improve on it. I can move from there, whereas I can't make any improvement on a lie. If I say, well, what I'm doing is great, I'm doomed. Kind of like when I was playing the piano, years ago as a kid. If I was playing the wrong note over and over, and I said to whoever was teaching me, no, I'm playing the right note, well, how could the teacher ever make me play better if I insisted I was playing the right note when it was wrong? I was doomed. Well, we started a little bit early tonight, I think several minutes. So unless somebody has any questions here, like in the next 30 seconds, we'll go ahead and close out. These have been great. Just wonderful questions, deep, thoughtful, insightful. So thanks for coming tonight. And next week, bring more friends. And we'll answer as many questions as possible. If you email your questions to me beforehand, even better, because then you don't have to remember them. And then I'll bring them up with your name, and then we can discuss them. So it's been good being with you, and remember, it's always about real love. Love y'all. See you next Tuesday.